Welcome to Graceful Healing, a podcast to get straight talk about healing and living again. My name is Maureen Lake. I'm a holistic health coach, speaker, author, and thyroid disease fighter. Each week, I'll be bringing you graceful conversations to inspire you to seek new ways to hit the reset button to catapult your health and vitality to new levels. Listen in and open your heart to all the new possibilities. Are you ready? Let's do this. Tara Bradford shares her story from childhood to where she is today. She's a sought-out powerhouse publicity specialist and speaker. Tara's story is so interesting. I know you'll enjoy her journey from living all over the world to purposely trying to fail so others would get the attention she felt they deserved. From a critical care nurse helping others during the most difficult time in their life to now, I know you're going to love and enjoy learning about Tara just as much as I enjoyed my conversation with her. Let's do this. I've known Tara for a while now, and she's one of the most genuine people I've ever known. So helpful, considerate, and one of the just absolute kindest people too. Tara's a healer, an educator, and incredibly compassionate. Plus, this woman knows her stuff. I can't wait for Tara to share her story with you. Her background in nursing has helped catapult her to where she is today, which is an amazing journey that you're going to be excited to hear. Welcome, Tara. I'm so happy you're here on my podcast.
Thank you, Maureen. That was a beautiful introduction, and I'm so excited to be here too.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait for people just to hear your story. So could you just tell us your personal story and how you landed where you are today?
Well, I started my career as a nurse, and I was a nurse for 10 years, working in critical care. And the thing that I did, besides take care of patients, I also found myself taking care of families and helping them communicate better and listening to people's regrets after something tragic happened. And one of the most surprising things that happened for me was that no matter what the outcome was of the health condition or the tragic accident or whatever the reason that person was in the hospital for, the family would still send me thank you cards, whether their loved one survived the accident or not. And they would thank me for everything I did. And I thought for sure if they were grieving and if they lost their loved one, they would not send me a thank you card. So that was confusing for me that they were still grateful for that. And I thought what people really want, the things they were saying was, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time with this person. I wish I had made different decisions when I had the time. And what they were really saying was, I wish I could have connected with this person on a deeper level. And what they were thanking me for was creating that connection. And that was when I decided I wanted to meet these people when they were thriving. How could I go back and meet this person when they were trying to make partner in the law firm, or meet them when they were ready to turn down the invitation to their family reunion because they had too much work to do, or whatever it was that was preoccupying their time, which was most of the time work. How could I help them see what's truly important to them and then make time for that, or make it a priority so that hopefully they never end up in a hospital room. But if they did, they would know that they did everything they could to create that connection, to build that relationship, to let their loved ones know that they're meaningful. Those relationships are meaningful. And that was when I discovered coaching. And I started, back up a little bit. I had to, I skipped a big chunk. I moved to New York City, and I moved here as a traveling nurse, and I had made it to the top of my career path, and I left all of that behind. No job title anymore, no fancy car, no big paycheck, and all of the things that I was doing in my life that I was like watching all these other people do the same thing, these high achievers who wanted the house and the car and the view and all the things. I was doing the same thing. And the thing that I wanted to teach them was that those things aren't meaningful in the way that you think they're going to be. And here I was doing the same thing in my own life. So I left all of that behind, moved to New York with 2 suitcases, a temp job. Yeah. A temporary job. And I was a registered nurse, no fancy director title or anything like that. And my contract was ending in 3 months, and I was staying with a friend and sleeping on a couch.
Wow.
And I was happier doing that than I had ever been in my whole life. And so I thought, well, there's something here. And as a nurse, when you think about being told that you have a limited amount of time to live in the hospital, and you start creating your bucket list and you start living your life like you only have a limited amount of time, then things change. And there's research around that shows when you start living your life like it's ending, then it doesn't end. It doesn't end as fast as it was predicted for those people who create the bucket list and go and do all the things they wish they had done and they're happy and fulfilled. That component of living your life is valuable in extending your life. And so I'm sitting here in New York City in my apartment, or my friend's apartment. And for the first couple of weeks, I didn't really go out or do anything. I ordered takeout. And I was ordering takeout from the restaurant around the corner before I discovered that there's apps for that. I was still calling. And they recognized my phone number and they knew my order. I had been ordering the same thing. And so I thought, well, I can't have my story of New York City because I had always dreamed of living here. I can't have my dream of living in New York City be, and then she slept on an IKEA couch and ordered Chinese takeout every day.
Oh gosh. So that was the big turning point.
That was it. And I'm an introvert. So that was hard for me to say, okay, well, my friends are not the people who work at this restaurant and I need to go find some friends. Mm-hmm. And I started going to networking events, but I knew I didn't want to network with people in healthcare because I felt like I knew them. Mm-hmm. I had always had friends that were other nurses or doctors or respiratory therapists or people who had worked in the hospital. So I thought, I want to meet people. I want to see what's outside of healthcare. So I started going to events where I was hanging out with all investment bankers and I was the only nurse, or everyone in the fashion industry. And I had never worked in fashion. And it was just out of curiosity that I put myself in those situations because I knew I was really good at asking questions. And in the hospital, working with patients, I also had to be really good at asking questions and not really talking about myself because it wasn't about me. Mm-hmm. And so I put myself in these situations. And the funny thing that happened was after I asked people a bunch of questions about themselves, they started to get uncomfortable and they're like, nobody's ever asked me so much about myself. I never talk about myself this much. Tell me what you do. And they try to turn the conversation around. Like, tell me about you. And I would say, oh, well, I'm just a nurse. Mm-hmm.
Just
I
a
put
nurse.
that word, just a nurse.
Yep.
And they would be really confused and they would say, oh my gosh, what are you doing at this event? What made you? And they became really interested in me. And then I started sharing my story. And so that was fascinating for me to put myself in a situation where I was different because I had been taught to blend in to, in high school, hang out with the cool kids or mm-hmm. have the right friend group and don't stand out too much and don't speak up and speak when you're spoken to mm-hmm. and all of those things right. that we're told. And so this was the first time in my life that I got to be myself and not blend in. And I was different on purpose, but not because I wanted attention, but then I was getting more attention. Mm-hmm. So that was really interesting to me. And I learned a lot about other industries. And I knew I wanted to do something different with my career. And I didn't know what that was. So this was kind of a discovery for me, which industry is right for me. And through that, I ended up meeting a coach, and I didn't know coaching was an industry. I thought I had met, I thought I found a needle in a haystack. I was like, oh my gosh, I found a coach. Like, what is this? Someone who's going to tell me, what I'm good at and then help me get better at those things. Mm-hmm. I've never heard of this. Like, I was taught that you hire a tutor when you're bad at something.
Yeah, that's true.
I know. It's interesting. And so I started working with a coach, and I was still curious in that relationship where he was asking me questions, but I was also asking him, like, what did you just learn from my answer? And what are we doing here? And how does it work? And at the end of that, he said, you'd be really good at coaching. Is it something you're interested in doing? And I got certified in high performance coaching at that point, but I was about to go to grad school to continue my education in nursing. So starting a business wasn't really on my radar. And he said I'd be good at it, so I got certified in it just because I like learning. But then my friends started noticing that I was different, and they said, you're happy. What are you doing? What is it, New York? Do I need to move to New York? Why are you so happy? We don't get it. What are you doing differently? So I started helping some friends and told them what I was doing. And they said, you have to tell everyone about this because everyone needs your help. And I was like, oh my gosh. And that was the point where it became less about me. It wasn't about me being on Facebook, posting pictures of myself, talking about myself all the time. It became about the helping. Mm-hmm. How could I help more people? And what is the message here? And what is missing in other people's lives that makes them feel less fulfilled?
It's amazing to me because that's what you were doing as a nurse too.
Right.
I mean, it's just crazy. And then you were able just to apply it to a whole new industry. And now you're amazing at this part of your life too. It's crazy. One of the things that I know about you is how you help people change their mindset. How did you, was that something you had to learn along the way through coaching, or is it innate with you? Because you're really powerful with that.
I think for me, it's been a lifetime of learning how to do that. Because when I was a kid, my dad worked in the oil industry or petroleum industry, and we moved a lot. I think I moved 12 or 13 times before my 18th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And I lived in different countries. I lived in Scotland, Venezuela, and Saudi Arabia for most of my childhood.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it's not something that I talk about very much, but I had to pivot or adapt or be willing to fail a lot because I was always the new kid and I didn't know what I was walking into. We didn't have the internet or Facebook, and I couldn't research things as easily as you can now. And so really it was just showing up on the first day and being willing to handle whatever was thrown at me. And sometimes that was, when I moved, an example of this, when I moved from Scotland to Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think I was 8 years old and I had a Scottish accent at this point. I was born in Louisiana, so I didn't start out with a Scottish accent, but I adopted one when I lived in Scotland because I went to their public school and I was going to school with Scottish kids. And so I just picked it up and I moved to Oklahoma and I spoke differently than everyone else around me. And the other kids thought it was really cool, but I was a really shy kid. I would turn bright red and I didn't want to be the center of attention. I hated speaking in front of the class. And so for everyone to come to me and be like, oh my gosh, you're different and you have this accent, and they would ask me to say words like, how do you say chocolate? How do you say bicycle? And then they would ask me to repeat the word back to them in my language, which was still English, but
Mm-hmm.
it sounded different. And so after a while of that, I was like, okay, how do I stop being the center of attention? And I changed how I spoke. I dropped the accent. Obviously, I don't have it anymore, but that was the point where I was like, I need to blend in. And there were other things about the school, like in Scotland, I was learning how to write in cursive and I was learning times tables and math. And I came to Oklahoma and the kids were singing songs about the states and the capitals.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know all 50 states and I certainly didn't know all the names of the capital cities in all of the states. So that was intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were learning how to put sentences together and what's an adjective and a noun and a verb. And they had songs for all of these things to help you remember what they were, but I didn't know the words to the songs. And so I had to jump in and try to figure out how to learn it. And I think being able to adapt and learn and change in those situations from an early age is just what has helped me change my mindset. I mean, at that point, I could have failed. I could have given up. I could have, this is too hard, or I don't know this, or I'm not from here, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to know this. But I kind of turned it into a game where I was like, okay, let me write out. Instead of learning the words to the song, I wrote out all the states and the capitals to memorize which ones go together and just made it a game with myself
Mm-hmm.
to memorize these things. And that changed when I moved to Saudi Arabia. I went from Minnesota to Saudi Arabia.
Gosh.
And it was the first time in my life. I was a little bit older. It was seventh and eighth grade. So I'm not sure how old I was, probably 12. And I realized that my brother was having a little bit harder time adapting. So I had started trying to help him with his homework and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only was I learning for myself, I was also teaching.
Wow.
And I realized when we moved to Saudi Arabia that there were kids who weren't having an easy time with school. And there became more of a separation between who was friends with who. Like we all got along because all of our parents had the same jobs, but grades started to matter more. And whether you got A's or C's was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that I had always gotten good grades and my parents were always really excited for me and I got a lot of attention for it. And so here I was not wanting to be the center of attention again and not needing help. I was like, if I am already getting good grades, then I don't need help because you hire a tutor when you're struggling. So I started getting bad grades on purpose. I got C's. I signed up for French and I was almost fluent in Spanish. So I just went to first year French and I tried out for the basketball team and I think I was 4 feet tall. I was under 5 foot. And so I knew I was going to fail at all of these things. And I thought then I won't be taking attention away from other people who really need it. Like the people who are struggling need attention because they need a tutor and they need help and they need to learn these things. And then what I realized was that by me not being the center of attention, I was not helping anyone else get at the attention that they need by being invisible.
Wow. Like how old were you then? Were you high school age or?
It was before high school. It was like 13 maybe.
Because that's a huge thing to realize at such a young age.
Yeah. I was always told I was 13 going on 30. I was that kid, like wise beyond your years was what I would get.
Sounds like.
And when that didn't work, I went back to getting good grades and learning Spanish. And then we moved to Texas. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but that's kind of how I learned how to change my mindset because I did it on purpose to adapt to different situations. And I think it was a survival skill at that point because I was so young. I was like, if I'm going to survive in this new school, then I need to figure out how to fit in and how to make friends and how to, make my teachers happy, get good grades, keep my parents happy. And how can I do that? And what's the best way? And so learning to adapt to those situations is probably where my mindset was initially formed.
Interesting, because even the fact that you moved to New York and totally changed everything you were doing is like kind of recreating your whole mindset again, like in a whole new setting. And I mean, that takes a lot of nerve to go to these different situations, and you're the nurse and everybody else an investment banker, and put yourself in those situations. Not everybody can do that. And then to think about where you are now, because you need to share with us what you do now so everybody can understand this incredible story, and like from traveling the world as a youngster and then going into nursing and having an amazing career. And then what you're doing now is like, it's just an incredible story. So tell everybody what you are up to now and the different programs you offer and the incredible speaking you're doing and just everything, because this really needs to be told.
So I ended up starting a business as a publicity strategist, and it evolved over time. I was a coach first, helping people. I didn't call it personal branding at the time, but I was really helping people see themselves the way that other people see them, so they could build their confidence and see what they're really good at and really be able to lean into those things that they're really good at and turn it into a business. And when I was doing that work, I ended up getting featured in the media every 2 weeks for an entire year. Started with the Dr. Oz show, where I was almost on TV, and right before the segment was supposed to be recorded, they ran out of time. And that was an accident. And I mean, me even being at the Dr. Oz show was an accident. I didn't know how I got there or how to recreate it. And so my search to understand how to recreate that situation, how to be featured in the media, was what led me to get featured every 2 weeks for an entire year. I didn't set that goal, but at the end of the year, I thought, I wonder how many times I was on a podcast and featured in an article and all of these things. And it ended up being every 2 weeks. And I even surprised myself. And that was just from, again, curiosity and learning and trying to figure out how it worked. And after being featured that many times, people started asking me, can you help me with this? And can you do this for me? And you would be so good at it. So people started calling me their PR fairy, because I was just really good at connecting people with the right opportunities. And I don't know how many times I've had someone tell me that one person you connected me to has completely changed my business, and it's totally taking off now because of that one connection. And that was really powerful for me. And so I started a program called Imposter to Influencer, which takes people through the steps to becoming an expert in their industry and getting featured in the media. But it also introduces them to the people that they need to know to support them on that journey as they grow their audience, and then how they can get a return on their investment of time on pitching for publicity. What should they expect in return? Because a lot of people come to me and they say, I got featured in Forbes, or I got featured in Entrepreneur or something, and it didn't work, so I'm not doing PR. And when I look at their strategy and how they wrote the article, or even sometimes what the topic of the article was, it's not related to their business, or they don't have all the pieces of the strategy working together to drive email subscribers or speaking opportunities or new clients into their business. And so that's what I help people do, is how do you get an ROI from PR that you can measure in your business, and help them develop their service-based one person or minimal employees, like 1 to 3 employees in their business, and to grow that.
Interesting. I mean, because you're still in the helping profession, you're still teaching people, but just a totally different industry.
Yes. And public relations and communications was never something that was even on my radar. It found me. So even in all of the networking I did and everything I was going to, I never went to a PR event.
Isn't that incredible? Gosh.
Yeah, I just love that quote by Rumi, what you seek is seeking you. And I think that's totally what happened. I was searching, I was looking for something. And then when I stopped looking, it found me.
That's powerful. That really is. Also, just share with our audience too that I know you just came back from London with a speaking engagement, because that seems like something that you're doing as well, just getting out and sharing your story and doing a lot of public speaking. Is that right?
That is right. I am speaking about success and failure and really through the lens of diversity and inclusion and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, this is the first time, I think in history, don't quote me on that, but it's one of the first times that young people report feeling lonelier than elderly people. And as a nurse, I know I've heard so many people say, I don't want to die alone, or nobody should die alone. And even studying human behavior and development in nursing school, they say that as you age, you have more of a desire for community. But at this point, 70% of millennials report feeling lonely, and only 46% of the elderly say they feel lonely. And we have access to more resources and we have social media, we have smartphones, we have internet. We can connect with anyone, and people feel more lonely even with all of those resources. And so I think it's fascinating to try to uncover why that is and how we can feel more connected. And really the basis for my talk, emotional intelligence and social skills and self-awareness and going back to shifting your mindset around some of the things that you might be embarrassed of or ashamed of, that you're afraid someone might know if they get too close to you. And so you're hiding or isolating yourself. And how can you feel more connected and let go of some of those past stories about yourself that are in your mind?
Wow. And I know just from being an educator myself, a lot of the kids at a really young age are relying so much more on, it just sounds so cliche, but it's really true, social media and the telephone to make their connections instead of getting together and doing things and playing games over the internet instead of playing games in one room, just different things that are isolating people now more so than that way before social media, computer time or whatever. So I just see that in the public school setting too. At a really, like I said, at a really young age, there's kids coming to elementary school that have to drop their cell phones off at the principal's office and come get it at the end of the day because, they're not even supposed to have them at school, but they all do. So it's crazy. There really is a lack of connection going on at the younger ages.
Yeah. And I think the difference is my generation grew up without those things and then had to learn how to use them later, and yours as well. And so we learned those social skills of how to connect with people in person, how to communicate, but then we had to adapt to technology later and learn how to incorporate that into our communication strategy. Whereas kids who are being raised now have always had the internet or seen their parents on their smartphones or had an iPad. And that's the first thing they learn instead of the last thing that they learn, which is for us, the last thing.
Exactly. I was at a restaurant the other day and it was a mom and dad and two little kids. One was a toddler and they all were on some type of smart apparatus. Even the toddler had like an iPad, just playing a game. And I'm not sure I saw them talk to each other the entire time I was there. It's just a whole different way of being right now. It's kind of sad.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. And to go back to the prioritizing and how you spend your time, I feel like the next thing people regret is going to be spending so much time on their phones in moments like that where they could have connected with the people around them sitting right in front of them.
That's so true. Absolutely. So considering that you had this amazing background of growing up and living in multiple, not only cities, but countries, what's like one sentence of advice that you'd tell your younger self if you could go back in time?
Don't be afraid to be different.
That's such wonderful advice, isn't it?
It is.
It is. We all just kind of want to blend in and not make waves, but it's that one person that stands up and speaks up and is different that gets noticed, in hopefully in really positive ways. So I love that advice. That's perfect. Yeah. Well, Tara, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Your story, like I said from the onset, I think it's just incredible. And it's something that people need to hear because, I mean, being a nurse, my sister is a nurse as well. I mean, it's such a difficult profession. People don't understand the mental strain, not only of taking care of someone physically, but the emotional piece of it that just has such a wear and tear on you as a person. And then to be able to move to New York City and just step out of your zone of comfort. And I just find it inspiring. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Thanks, Tara. Oh, thank you so much for joining me today. This episode is brought to you by my book, The Graceful Advocate, Taking Control of Your Life After a Diagnosis of Thyroid Disease. You can find it currently on Amazon. I love it because my friends call it a purse book. They keep it with them when they go to the pharmacy, grocery store, or even to the doctor's office. It's a great little guide to keep you on track and informed. I can't wait for next week when I get to see you back on the pod. Thank you for listening. I really do appreciate you so much. If you ever need someone to chat with about your healing journey, don't ever hesitate to reach out to me through my website at maureenlake.com.